Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2023 Koha-US Cataloging Special Interest Group. I have one thing to share with folks that I'm going to put into the chat. Let's see. Let me get this in here. Yes, there we go. It is a YouTube playlist that I saw mentioned on AutoCat, which is a email discussion list of cataloging and authorities. And its creator made this YouTube playlist for their Introduction to Cataloging class, and it looks really good. And she said, when people asked, "Ooh, I love it. Can I share it with my students? Can I share it with my new cataloger?" She said, "Please do. Hope it's helpful." So I thought that folks might like to take a look at that. And the videos are broken up really nicely into some basic, internet introduction to cataloging, introduction to Ferber, lots of different things. So folks might find those videos of interest. Also, the koha-US conference videos are being edited and put up. The entire day long live streams are available, but Christopher Brannon at Koha-US is breaking them up into their separate videos and everything and getting those up. Day one is already up. So folks, do take a look at that. There were a lot of really good presentations at Koha-US this year. So does anyone have anything they'd like to bring to the group this month?
Y'all remember my old bug of the frameworks not loading properly?
Yes.
They're not loading properly again, which I discovered during my presentation. But I posted on the bug and someone else had the problem. So I was wondering, is anyone else in this group have that, like use the frameworks or have that problem? Or I don't have a vendor, so I don't know what they're doing on it. The person who posted said, yes, I reported it when the update happened. And I'm like, okay, they probably reported it to their vendor.
Do you have a bug number for us, or shall I go looking while you're talking?
Can I remember what it
I'll
is?
go looking. Does anyone else have any problems with their frameworks loading or?
Don't use frameworks in that way. So have everything into Mark Edit.
There it is. Bug 30250.
Thank
Configure
you.
when to apply framework defaults when cataloging. It's connected to a system preference, so it's somewhat scary that a system preference no longer works the way you tell it to. Has that ever happened before? Like I've never had Koha, like the system preference, like you've set it and then it stopped working. Like I've never experienced that before. It's only on the 2211. Like the 2105 updates still work perfectly fine. But I can't update until we were all set to update. I was so excited. And then that happened. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm back where I was a year ago. I'm having deja vu. Okay.
It can totally happen. And yes, and it totally gets fixed.
Yeah, it's just the waiting that's the hard part.
Right? So yeah, folks, if you use frameworks that way, we don't. All of our records are in the default framework. But if you do, please take a look at the bug. Please take a look at your systems.
Okay, so I was just reading up on it, and we use frameworks where like our catalogers use the FASTAD framework, and then because we do centralized cataloging, so we keep changing them to the default framework. And then we have 2 libraries that use acquisitions EDI. So that framework, when that uses the acquisitions framework, so that causes tons of issues right now. So what we've been doing is that our cataloging assistant will run a report every day that tries to find things that have been with that specific framework, and then we will export those records and then re-import them and then choose the framework at that time. So we don't export any item information, we just do the bibs, and then we just reload the bibs again. And then when you do that, that's where you can change the framework. So that's what we've been messing around with, the frameworks, trying to get them to work. But yeah, we would like the acquisitions people to be able to also use the FASTAD framework, because they can't edit the acquisitions framework once they import it.
I'm wondering if that, like, in trying to fix that, that somewhat broke what was there, and they're still trying to figure out. Because I'm like, I wonder if I need, because I don't think we're using the acquisition framework. Like, we have that turned off, and I'm like, I wonder if I now need to churn like all the frameworks are now like almost lumped together, the FASTAD and the acquisition, and then your book, like all the others, instead of kind of in different places. But
yeah, and when they were importing before, they were able to choose the framework at the import, but now they can't. That button's gone or something. So yeah, it's all probably related to that.
it probably, it's the options in the system preference, what you select, because one of them is add import. I feel like that one, and then existing records, it doesn't work. Like, those are the ones that have stopped working. If you add a new record and apply the framework, it works fine.
Yeah,
it's really
yeah, it's
weird.
that system preference thing. Yeah, definitely, I agree.
It's really weird.
Yeah,
This might be worth taking to the acquisitions special interest group, since I'm hearing some, some relating. It might be worth checking with them what their workflows are, and since it's related to a system preference, the system administration.
Yeah, I gotta go back. So the acquisitions is new. The system add is where I fixed it last. Well, yeah, no, that's where I fixed it last time. So maybe they could.
Yeah, there might be people there who are experiencing it and have some ideas or aware of how they fixed it, or right, or at least could, if they're having the same problem, could go comment on the bug, vote on the bug, help get some traction on the bug.
Yeah. Do you know? So the bug is listed as pushed to old stable. And it works on the 2105, but it stopped working on the 2211. Should I change the status?
You
I'm
can
still learning how to do Bugzilla.
Comment on the bug and ask that question. Say, hey, since this isn't working in 2211, should the status be changed, or should we open a new bug? Or go ahead and ask.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna say open a new bug, because I'm kind of like in both worlds. I do dev stuff and library stuff. So I would say open a new bug, but then comment in that old bug with like, hey, I opened this new bug number, whatever, and like link to your new ones so that people who worked on the old ones see it.
Well, it literally, it's the old bug. Like, it's the exact same thing. The bug they fixed in 2211 and 2305 worked until 2211.09, and it broke and it stopped working. But it works fine on whatever point number the 2105 is on. But it still doesn't work on the 2211.10. So it's like if you have an earlier version of 2211, it works, it's in there. Because I'm like, it would basically be a duplicate of this.
It's not a duplicate though, because the software is different. With every new versions, the software and the code has changed, right? So it's kind of like imagine every version is a new child. It had the same parents.
Yeah.
But it's a different iteration. There's different code. And do put in all those details about all those different, that is really important.
Okay.
If I don't know, Emily, is that an apt analogy?
That is a great analogy, yeah. And it could be that the bug's happening for a different reason. So it's actually a different bug that looks like the same bug. So that's also useful to know to track it down. But yeah, that's a great analogy. I love that.
I like analogies. They're very helpful.
I find them useful in trying to comprehend something especially as vague as code. And it's one of my favorite columnists way back, like in the 1990s. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten his name, said something like, when you're talking about electrons, it's hard to tell one from the other.
One of my more memorable college professors, the kind you remember forever, who died much too soon, started out explaining the theory of relativity by holding up his hands, saying, pretend there's a mirror in each hand and there's a beam of light bouncing back and forth. Now, when you start moving, it starts going a little further. And that's what time does. But yeah, I like analogies, metaphors.
We are creatures of imagination and story. It helps us understand.
Especially catalogers.
Right. So yeah, Lauren, we're here for you. Let us know how it goes if you take it to the other SIGs, and yeah, report back. Does anybody have anything or any other thing to bring to the group? Everything's working smoothly. We're just cataloging all the things.
Well, I just got back this week.
Yeah. I'm getting called up from the conference, so I haven't discovered any new problems. I'm still trying to solve all the old problems that were there before. And the only reason I have this one is because I discovered it at the conference, right in the middle of my presentation. And I'm like,
well, luckily you were among friends. The Koha community is very supportive, and I think we've all been there with something going wrong in the middle of a live conference presentation.
Yeah, I certainly remembered that.
Oh, hi. I did open a bug about cataloging recently. I forgot. This one has to do with using item templates. So like there's an anchor in the item add page where when you go to add an item, it jumps you down to the form, so you don't have to scroll down past all the holdings. And that works when you add a new item or when you edit an existing item, but if you apply a template, it loads at the top of the page. And we're using templates for periodicals, which have lots of items on them, so that's a lot of scrolling. So that was a frustration brought to me, so I went ahead and opened a bug about it.
I'm totally adding myself to the CC on that because we have a lot of records with a lot of items.
How many records, what is the largest number of items anyone has on a record? So we are running into an issue with this, and we have set up this whole project where all of our periodicals, we use item groups, and we can't transfer item groups, and you can't transfer partial items from a record. I think that's correct. So I can't just say like, oh, I want to select all these items from 2020 and transfer them to another bib. So we have this whole project going where we're identifying every record and item record and item group that we want transferred to a different bib and sending it to Bywater. They're running some sort of script to clean it up, but we have some bibs that have 3,000 items on them, and even the ones that we are breaking out, we're breaking out a bib record currently for 2023 issues only, and everything else is going somewhere else. But even then, we still have over 1,000 records from 2023 on, say, People Weekly. So I'm just curious, like, how many are we way above what normal what everybody else has, or do you also have like 500, 1,000 items on records? Yeah.
I ran a report. Mine caps out. My biggest one is 209 on one record.
Wow.
And I know there's, I do have this bug that we talked about a little bit at conference, that there's discussion about changing how items display in the biblio view, which would help that page load better when you've got lots of items there. And it needs sign off, it looks like. So there's movement.
I don't know how to find the one with the most items, but our People Weekly for 2023 has 728. So yeah, it's we're in the same boat trying to figure it out as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's because you have multiple copies.
We're consortium, so we have 35 libraries that are probably have People Weekly.
Got it.
Yeah, we have about 50 libraries that would have People Weekly, and some of them definitely get multiple copies within them. Yeah.
Our consortium for journals, because we've heard that over 100, you start to have issues, and we're unsupported. So like, we try to stay on the what can Koha do? We don't try to shoot for the stars. What we've decided is those journals that have, like, we know every library has this journal and there's like 100 or more volumes. Each library gets a record. So like, we would have, there's one journal that I'm like, everyone probably has it. So we'll end up with 23 records for that. As soon as everyone like catalogs it. We have a lot of libraries where they have the journals. They're just, it's not in the catalog. But that's how we kind of solved the too many items on our record, because we were starting to have that on some of the records. They just slowed down. And then we also started having issues with the parent-child using easy analytics. If you have a record that has like every volume in that journal is connected and there's like 100 or more records, that really slows it down if you're using it, easy analytics. But as soon as you move that to using the control number and the 773, and it might work with the show components, the loading issue went away. it wasn't hard to load. So that's how we've handled our issues with journals.
That's a very interesting approach.
When you don't have someone to say, hey, can you, fix this for us?
You get creative.
You gotta get creative of, okay, there's like in Koha, the Koha community knows that when a record has a lot of items, there's a loading issue. Like they know the problem, they know about the problem, they are aware of it. They just don't know how to fix it yet. And so that's it's a different kind of problem, I guess. So with each version, I feel like that is getting better. So like they are somehow working on it with every version because those records are loading. But you're really maxing out the system if you have records with several thousand items.
Mm-hmm.
I popped into the chat how I'd do the 245 if I were breaking out a journal by years.
Yeah,
yeah,
we have really figured out how our patrons really like to look by like the whole magazine at once. We don't do journals. We just have magazines. I mean, maybe some do journals, but our biggest problem is magazines. And we thought about doing like every library could get their own bib record for their magazines, but patrons really want to see, they want people. They don't care where it comes from. They want to be able to place a hold on it from wherever. And a lot of libraries like to keep old issues of things. So we have like, I think 4 separate broken down bib records for Time magazine because we have it back to like 1961, I think. Life magazine, National Geographic, we have those. One library has every single issue from the beginning. And some patrons do actually take them out. Like we have a lot of consumer reports. Those ones go out all the time. You would take them out, Heather?
Yes, I am that library user. My husband and I were even at the public library a while back looking at, I think it was Architectural Digest or some sort of home magazine, maybe Home Beautiful, something like that from the 50s and 60s because we wanted to see the colors. Our living room we're trying to do kind of mid-century. We wanted to see the colors. So yeah, I'm that patron.
Mm-hmm.
So do you do like how are you doing the title? I mean, I imagine I'm the patron that just keyword searches.
Yeah, so the titles we have basically
Sometimes I'll pop in a 246 and using the like one blank, I believe, if my memory's correct, and then a subfield I known as subfield A, like People Weekly, People Magazine. I'll put in titles that I'm not sure even ever appeared on it, but that's sometimes people will do like a title and it's like it's People Weekly. It's People Magazine.
yeah. Yeah, so we have for some things like that, we might have multiple titles. But I just linked a link to our record and you can see we have an item type issue going on here of book versus periodical versus review, which means you had the wrong item type, you need to go review it, but they still haven't done that. But our title is just the name of it, and then if it's one of the ones broken down by year, we just put the range of years after it. And then if you scroll down in the links, we have links to the other bib records. So if you're looking for a specific issue from 2000, you're going to want to click that issues from 1991 to 2019 record and go that way. So generally, any of these ones that have a main record, which is just the current year, and then broken down by year, other records, we have links to direct you to those. So far, it's been working okay. Yeah, we haven't had, at least, I mean, I don't work in the public library, I work in the consortium office, so I have not personally had any issues of patrons saying they can't find something. And usually the libraries would let us know if they were getting complaints from their patrons, but we found this linking thing works pretty well. I did just discover that a thing I forgot to do in the migration is go back and change all the links to the Koha catalog URL instead of our Sierra URL. So they were trying to go to a bib record for the Sierra OPAC that doesn't exist. So that was something I was like, oh, right, because they specifically in the URL has the bib number. So they were pointing to a Sierra bib number.
There's always something.
There's always something. So that is one thing that wasn't working with the URLs, but that's it.
I don't want to admit how much work I did myself on this, because it was a lot and a lot of overtime that I just did on my own time. But I really went into our periodicals on the Aspen side, and I just so all of our records that are split are all grouped together under, you know, People Weekly, and then all of the editions, so like 2001 to 2022 are under that heading, so they're in their own group but all in the single People Weekly group. So a patron can just search for People Weekly and then all of the editions would pop up. That was a lot of manual grouping myself on the Aspen side. That's what I mean. It's so much work. I don't even want to admit how much work it was, but it looks really good now. And yeah, it does look good. So if you want to look at it and if you want to ask, I would suggest getting help with it because it is so much work for one person to do. And then, so once I did that, so I then grouped it with our e-magazines, and then I used the e-magazines as the cover image. So that will update every time, every few weeks or so with the most current issue. Then on the staff side, I actually made cover images of the logos. So when staff are searching in Koha, because it's not connected to the e-magazine, so it's different, but at least they can see the logo, and they're all different colors, and I just put them all in the center and stuff. So if they search People Weekly in Koha, they'll just see the logo. And then
wow.
Yeah, and then I labeled everything as magazine instead of periodical on Aspen side. And then I also split out newspapers as well. So even if they're periodicals in Koha, they're still split out between newspaper and magazine for Aspen. So patrons know that they can't place holds on newspapers, but they could on magazines. Wow. But I'm totally willing to help you because I am pretty proud of it, but it's too much work for one person. So definitely you need help with it. I'm happy to help you with it.
Thank you. That sounds really cool. I now am going to play around with, if I group, because I didn't even think about grouping together in Aspen the broken out issues.
Yes.
So I'm going to play around with grouping them and see what that looks like.
Yeah, because we force item holds on our periodicals. anyways. So when you go to place a hold, there's a whole list that pops up, and the patron has to select the library and the specific issue anyway. So even though they all could have the June 2023 version, they would still have to, a patron would still have to select the specific copy from a specific library.
Gotcha. Yeah, we did do that in Sierra, but we don't do that here.
I would also encourage y'all to take this coolness to the circulation SIG, because they're into, you know, circulation and public services, and this is so cool. And I think there are a lot of people there who are dealing more with the patron side and Aspen and that sort of thing, who'd really be interested in how this cataloging approach and organizing approach enhances patrons finding these things.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Well, does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring to the group?
An anecdote and suggestions to help me with a long-term project. First of all, this someone called this morning to see if we had Harvard Business Review going back a decade or so, and that we did. Turns out he wanted one from 1999, and added that up 24 years ago, which happens to me more and more often. But a recent cataloging meeting convinced me that maybe someday at some point I need to start doing authority control in the MedStar authors catalog. How, well, what I'm thinking of doing is exporting all the, say, departments or all the names, and using Excel to deduplicate, so it just have variant spellings of the one author's name. Like if there's one person, Zachary Aaron Jones, sometimes he has Z Aaron Jones or Aaron Z Jones, or yeah. Once I
Are
get
these
this,
authors for whom there might be existing authority records, or do you think not?
in the author's catalog, very unlikely, because I haven't been doing anything with authority records. You might have official Library of Congress or NLM authority records. I don't know. I should check, shouldn't I?
Yeah, because you could put them into MarcEdit and run them in MarcEdit and pull in some authority records, and then if those go into Koha and they're linked and they have the C froms with the alternative forms and the names, Koha would update them, but that's a whole nother approach and a whole different kettle of fish.
And once I get everything set up, when I run the reindexer, that automatically take care of everything, or is it more complicated than that? Will it take all the authority records that are, all the names aren't real authorities, and if I have them as alternates in the authority record, will it change that? you can see, I really have not done anything with authority records, and I'm kind of daunted by it.
Again, we're supported, but it's my experience that the magic of the script, like for example, when I have a name change or a subject heading change, I just import the new authority record and it overlays the old one. And then when the magic script runs, my bibs that are linked to that are automatically updated and changed.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
If I actually get this somewhere on my desk, I will keep updating you.
Yes, and keep in mind too that authority control is a process. It's not a project with set dates. It's a process.
Hello, Heather. That's
Hi, Aida.
cool for
Hi.
me too, since I've managed to import some of my records. I finally got everything done with lots of help from Lauren and Fred. So I have to thank them especially. And one of the things that I'm going to have to pay attention to is the fact that a lot of my thesis mentors have names which contain Central European characters. Is there any special setting or what's the word for it? Oh, I cannot remember now. But anything that I need to set up so that I can have correct sorting of these characters.
I believe you have to be sure your records have come in under, is it Mark 8?
UTF-8?
Okay, thank you, Fred.
When I switched to UTF-8, stopped getting those little black diamonds where the accents and copyright and everything else should be.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would work in Central European characters.
I think we're talking about character encoding.
I think we also had to do something on the back end related to ICU chains configuration. So I put the thing in the wiki. I'm looking in my email. I'm trying to remember where I first discovered this, but Zebra doesn't handle non-Roman script characters very well. Elasticsearch handles it much better. But I think it's called IC. There's an international standard for scripts that is now compatible with the newer versions of Koha, starting at 2205, maybe 2111. I'll keep looking. But the wiki I put in, the link I put in the chat is one place to start. I will look and see if I can find the actual name of the setting, but it's something that has to be done on the back end because our IT person, I just told him about it and then he implemented it and it works for all of we can now search our Thai script that has been unsearchable for like forever, I guess. So I'll find that so that because it would apply to yours as well. So
I've got a question for everybody. So we've got a staff member who sometimes has extra time on their hands, and I'm supposed to help them learn how to do some catalog cleanup. And our catalog the records are fairly good, but I'm kind of looking for ideas on things, probably reports just to make it easy on how to find records that need to be cleaned up. And probably the biggest problem, since we're a large consortium, would be duplicate records that need to be merged. And the other day, Heather sent me a link to the reports library, and there's lots of stuff in the reports library. There's a bunch of reports on finding duplicates, and I'm curious, what have you all found is the best method for finding duplicates, to make sure that you're not merging stuff that you shouldn't be merging, even if it looks like it on the surface? I didn't know if ISBN, or do you look at title and author, then just look at the MARC record to find, or kind of what your methods are, and if you have other cleanup things that you suggest as well, that would be great.
Yeah, when I'm looking at Bibs to merge, it is author, title, or edition, and publication information. So 1XX field, 245, 250, and 260 or 264 fields to see, are we talking the same thing or different editions?
As you probably know this already, it took me a while to figure out. Some MARC records have 5 or 6 ISBNs, but they're not all for the same thing.
So ISBN would be probably one to avoid.
One to include, but not depend on.
Okay.
Yes. Publishers throw ISBNs on things that oftentimes we would consider different editions, but they have the same ISBN. So yeah, awareness, but not reliance.
Particularly electronic or print versions.
Yeah, we have a lot of records where we'll have, mostly I would say this is in children's, but we have like the picture book record, but then we have a kit that has the book and the CD. And so both of those would have the ISBN for the book in them so that you could find them, but we wouldn't want to just blind merge those. But then we do also, at one point, we had brought in a new library to the consortium, and for some reason, their records didn't get attached properly. And so they kind of had a lot of the same stuff that we already had, but a new record was created. So we do want to look at ISBN for those, because that is something that is the same in those. But if we're looking by ISBN, we do compare the full bib record. But the 001 is more likely to be a duplicate of the same exact record in our system, at least. But we tend to not go by simply just title and author, because yeah, there's a bunch of different formats of things. We do put paperbacks and hardcover on the same record, but everything else would get its own record. Board book versus picture book would get its own. Big book versus picture book would get its own. So I personally would never blindly merge things, but I think it depends on how well you know what type of data is in your system already.
And I know a couple weeks ago at the koha-US conference, they talked about there was a plugin called the deduplication plugin or something that Nick made. And it sounds like a great idea, but I wonder if that you could run into the blind merge problem with that. So I don't know. Has anyone had any experience with that? I'm a bit hesitant to try that.
We did a dedupe via scripts many years ago and wouldn't recommend it. We're still recovering.
Oh,
yeah, and I'm sure that it wasn't Nick's script. I'm sure his is probably a little more thorough. But yeah, it merged a lot of things that we didn't really want merged. there's still weird books on weird records because of it, like because they had the same ISBN, and yeah, doing it one by one is rigorous, but probably the better way to go. And I was trying to look at my report here. It's big and nasty, and I hit run like 5 minutes ago, and it's still going. So I don't know if I'm gonna recommend my report, but and I don't remember what it does exactly. I have it labeled as potential duplicate bibs, title, author, publisher, paging. So that's what we're using rather than
Oh yeah, the
ISBN.
300, the pages can be a tell as well. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jason. When it comes to cleanup projects like this, I always use the old standard. There's fast, cheap, and good. Pick two. And I mean, if I were dealing with a catalog with 10 million bibs, I would really use a script and be able, because cleaning up the consequences would be more efficient and would be fine. And also there's good and then there's good enough. So, you know, you want to pick where you want to be in the good and the good enough. But if in my setting, it's a smaller catalog. So we always choose the higher quality, slower approach. And if you've got the staff time to do it, that's super terrific. And another thing I'd recommend are the common misspellings, like the untied states. Do a search for untied states and then clean up where that appears. Since we're in San Francisco, we also look for, you know, San Francisco and I'm or Maritime Library, and
some of the other stuff that I've run into recently are the encoding fields. So like found that a lot of my stuff has bad 008, so they weren't sorting by date correctly. So that's one to look into. What was the other sort that title sorts. So I had a bunch of records where the second subfield indicator was wrong. So it wasn't sorting B's and A's and articles and stuff correctly. So that's an easier cleanup project because you can run the report, find them all, and then pull them over into MarcEdit and fix the indicators in batches.
indicators matter.
They really do.
I put in chat, yeah. I used to go into when I was doing cataloging cleanup, the Terry Ballard typos page, where it's just like you copy that in and you just look for every single one, and that's what I would do is, yeah, all the common ones in there would just copy and paste those in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't remember which one it was. It's like, yes, it's the Terry Ballard one. Yes.
That's fun to just look through that list.
Yeah. Looking through this, I'm like, I guess this is confirmation that I'm in the right fields, that I look at this and I'm like, ooh, fun. Let's go find typos. This was just so long. Wow.
Bill Bryson once got a job on the British paper. Because among other things, he knew how to spell Cincinnati.
Mississippi.
I used to live on Mississippi Avenue, so that one was a little better.
So maybe in our cataloging SIG resources page, those of you who are also on the education committee for Koha-US, maybe link to the Terry Ballard typo list as a helpful resource for cataloging cleanup.
I don't know if this is appropriate for your catalog, Michael, but a cleanup that we're doing a lot of is item type doesn't match the bib item type. We have our item types and collection code situation is a mess, and it's making a lot more confusion, but we have our item types that have a format and then also the loan period in them. So we have like book 21 day, book 7 day, book 2 day. And obviously a bib record can only have one item type, but there can be multiple items attached. Each library has their own loan period, even if it's the same type of material. So we have run this really fancy SQL query that says bib item type does not match majority of item types attached, so that we can find, hey, this is a record where all like half the items have book on CD, or more than half the item have book on CD, but the bib record has music CD. That is a common one. We don't know why it happened, but a lot of our records that are actually music CDs came over as book on CD. So that's like a common one we can run where we can say, hey, most of the records are like this. We did come up with a standard. If it's a book, a regular book, the bib should be book 21 day because that's the majority. Even if every library attached has book 7 day because it's new, eventually it'll go book 21 day when it's not new anymore. So we had to come up with those kinds of things, but yeah, just finding inconsistencies between the bib item type and the item type. I wish they had different names. And the item type and the collection code also have a connection for us too. So finding reports, looking for inconsistencies there as well.
Sounds like a fun report.
Yeah.
Michael, I found that most of our dirty records were connected to item types, which is that whole presentation I did on Friday, and then Saturday was the whole presentation on how I fixed it using MarcEdit. I've put a link to all the reports that I used, and some of it was like just doing a report for each library and seeing what was there. Like, did I see any weird stuff just by the library? That, I mean, that did a lot. And then I had so many duplicate records with multiple item types, but most of them were related to journals. They had like book and journal or journal and reprint. And so Jason gave me a report that I could look at 2 item types at a time. And then, so that helped. And now I've kind of stopped because I'm like, you know what? If I clean up all my journals, I'll have fixed like a lot of, like, my duplicate records are related to journals. My item type issues are related to journals. What, like, that's it's a project within a project. I've cleaned everything else up. I've added, like, the 008 was missing on a lot of our stuff, and the date, like, you can move the date in the 260C or 264C up to the 008, which I was planning on doing. And then I saw that a lot of our dates had like dashes or question marks, or they weren't really dates. And so that's another problem. Like, okay, I have to clean that. I have to do that project before I can do, it's a rabbit trail. But yeah, the reports helped, and just one step at a time. I'm eventually going to do duplicate records. I think I've read somewhere, and I sort of did it once a long time ago. MarcEdit can merge records based on different criteria. So I was going to merge records based on the title, the publisher, and the date instead of the ISBN. Because I have a lot of titles that, like, there is no ISBN. Like, they're old, or our organization has published a lot of materials in which all of our libraries have, and they didn't have ISBNs. I don't know why.
Brief records sometimes don't come in with them, or it's based on pre-publication before it was assigned.
Mm-hmm.
Someone here
And
published a book without an ISBN.
Mhm.
It's a lot of fun to try to find it.
good
Well,
luck.
we have
That's
just a few more minutes. Michael, please tell us how it's going, how it goes, share your experiences. I know we'd all be interested.
Yeah, and thank you for the tips. Lauren, I wasn't at the Saturday of the conference, so I'm looking forward to when the recording gets put so I can watch the second half of that.
I will. I'm sorry. I go really, really fast.
That's why
So
recordings are
you
so
may
good.
want
We can
to
go
like
back, we can pause.
listen to it at slow speed. And if you have any questions, like feel free to email me and I can help you. I want I want to share the knowledge that I learned so that no one else has to go through the frustration and hair pulling that I went through. But
I
yeah.
Well,
can
there
testify
you
to
go.
that.
That's going to be our logo and our t-shirt, sharing knowledge to prevent the hair pulling that we went through.
There's got to be pearls in there somewhere too.
Absolutely. The t-shirt's going to have pearls on it, drawn on. And on the back, it's going to say, I'm not really a cataloger.
Sorry, I'm trying to actively add some of my reports to the wiki. It's really slow. So there's the one that Lauren was talking about comparing to collection codes, which is big for us because we often use it for like Blu-rays and DVDs, comparing to see if they're sharing a record. But I changed it a little where it's got just drop downs now, so you can pick your two categories to compare.
Thank you. Okay, I see we're at the top of the hour. Any last minute imminent things or? Okay, everyone, I want to mention to join us in November. We are always here the first Thursday of the month. Looking forward to it. And thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording.